I've also cut a dummy piece the exact same dimensions as one of the stiles so I can drill test holes, mount the hinges, and test. Boo. I've cut the interior wall to size and painted it. To make my drawer life easier, I'll make sure it's flush with the face frame on this side. It really needs to be parallel to the opposite wall as well, so I make some spacers to make sure that it is perfect. This side is flush, allowing easy mounting of the drawer slides, but that's not going to work on the opposite side. So I'm going to need to build 3 spacers out of scrap. And my other assistant helps me mount the slides.
Hey, you still got it? Thank you.
So these ones went in very smoothly. Now it's time to install the other side. But before we can do that, we need to install our spacers that we made and make sure we get them in the right spot so we can screw those in. What I'm going to do with those is I'm going to mark the middle of the screw holes and mark the middle, roughly, of the piece. And simply line that up. I've made these wide enough to allow a little bit of wiggle room for mounting the actual slides, so they don't need to be exact. There you go. Just need some drawer boxes now. Normally I'd make the drawer boxes now, but I'm gonna have to do things a little bit out of order. I don't have any plywood in stock. So I've ordered some 15 mil birch plywood, and while I'm waiting for that to be delivered, I'll get to work on the cabinet doors and the drawer faces. I'm gonna be making these doors and drawer fronts out of MDF for the panel and pine for the frames. Why pine? Well, if I was in North America, I would drive on down to the lumber yard and grab some poplar and be off to the races. But I can't really do that here in Germany. The only 2 real options available are spruce, which I don't want to use, or pine, which isn't terrible. And it's got that new pine smell, so that's a positive. I could have made them all out of MDF, but I kind of don't want to deal with the end grain and painting that. I'm not that experienced in it. I have made some doors and drawers, drawer fronts out of pine in the past, and they've turned out pretty good, so I think we're going to be okay. No matter what, this part of the project is modular, meaning worst case scenario, if I hate them, I'm out my time and a little bit of money making these, but I can pull them off and rebuild them out of something I like better. I make the frame for the doors the exact same width as I made the face frame. All the pieces cut down to the proper size. We have one end squared off on the compound miter. Now it's time to cut them all to the proper length. I have measured and then double checked all my measurements to make sure we're good. Made a detailed cut list on the back of whatever scrap paper this is. I'm going to start with the stiles, correct, rails, stiles. I'm going to start with the stiles first because those are going to be cut to the exact length. When it comes time to cut the rails, they are going to be inset. So they're going to be -5 centimeters on each end, so shorter. However, we're going to allow for a little bit of the tongue to fit in, so we're going to have to do a little bit of calculation on that, which pretty confident we can do. But let's get started on the stiles. Once the pieces are cut to length, I double check to make sure I have everything covered. My favorite part about shaker style doors, or frame and panel, or 5-piece, I heard someone call them the other day, which sounds kind of cool. My favorite part is actually making them. They're pretty fun to make and relatively simple. They're going to consist of a 4-piece frame with a panel in the middle, the 5th piece. So we're going to cut a slot in all of our pieces to accept the panel, but it's also going to accept the tongue for the top and the bottom piece, and it's all going to fit together quite simply. So the first step is we got to find the middle of our piece. We don't need exact center, just a good starting point. Set the depth of the groove. Around 1 centimeter is probably fine. Then run a test piece through. Go through once and then flip it around. This ensures the slot will be in the middle. Adjust the fence until both cuts add up to the thickness of the panel. And then get sawing. Now's the time for us to cut the tongues on our rails, the parts that go across the top and the bottom of our doors. Do not cut tongues on the stiles, the up and down part. That's not going to work out so well. So we're going to raise our blade up to leave a tongue the exact size of the groove that we've already cut. Now we have to determine how long we want the tongue to be, and we want it to extend all the way into the groove. So what I do is I line it up with the fence right to the outside of the blade, and that's going to give us proper length. Now, we're going to use the fence in combination with the T-square, which people will tell you never, 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 never do. But in this case, there's going to be no offcut piece, so I assure you it is safe. As safe as table saws can be, of course. Now, this is why we cut those test pieces. We don't want to be stumbling around in the dark with our keepers, so we have these test pieces that we can use to dial it in exactly how we want it. This process would be easier with a dado stack, but those are verboten in Europe. But multiple passes with a regular blade works just fine. Flip it over and cut the other side, and you've got yourself a tongue. Test for a nice snug fit. I would rather have it a hair too loose than too tight. You'll risk splitting the wood later. We have our frame ready to assemble, and now we need to cut the center panel to the correct size. The width is easy. It's the same size as the bottom piece from tongue to tongue. For the height, measure the inside of the frame and add 1 groove depth to each end. All the door panels are cut, ready for assembly. Now I'm going to move on and build the drawer fronts. We could do the exact same method and just have this 5mm inset panel, but when it comes time to screw them onto the drawer boxes, this void is going to present a problem. Now we could cut a piece and just glue it in and fill that gap later on, and we're not really going to see it. But instead, I've picked up some 12mm MDF, which I'm going to cut to the exact same size, and then I'm going to add a 6.5mm rabbet so that it fits in. The front looks the same, the back's going to sit flush, and we're going to have no problem screwing it on or installing the hardware. I cut the same dado on all 4 sides. Just like the tongues, this requires multiple passes and a sacrificial fence at the end. I like to dry fit all my pieces before glue up. Make sure to clean up as much squeeze out as you can. A light clamp will keep everything in place while the glue dries. 6 doors, 3 drawer fronts, glued up, ready to go, but oh no! we have a crack in one of the doors, and one of the styles of the doors is a small crack, and that's going to be a problem. Ideally, I would just replace the one broken piece, but since they're all glued together, that's going to be a problem. So either I can remake the entire door brand new, all 5 pieces, or I can try ripping off the broken piece on the table saw, creating a replacement piece, gluing it together and clamping it, and once it's cut to size and painted, no one's going to notice. Unless they do, at which point I'm going to have to make a brand new door anyway. So since I'm playing with house money at this point, let's give it a try. And we're back. I had to hit pause on this project for a little bit while I flew over to Vancouver to shoot a completely unrelated video project. But that's in the rear view, so let's get moving on this one again. Couple of bits of good news from my trip. My buddy Edgar picked up a tube of Evercoat, Everglaze, and Spot Putty, the red, he says. He swears by it. He says not only does it dry fast, but it doesn't shrink over time. So we're going to fill these brad nail holes on the face frame and get this thing painted. The other good news is I have phenomenal jet lag, as I always do when I return to Europe, which means I'm awake at 2:30 in the morning. That's it, my day starts. So I can edit that Vancouver project all the way until the kids get up in the morning. When they're out the door for school, I'm back on this. So we call that multitasking. They make special low profile hinges specifically for face frame cabinets that attach directly to the inside of the frame. However, it seems they're very expensive and difficult to find here in Europe. So I bought a bunch of the standard hidden style, Euro style hinges. The problem being they need to be side mounted. And as you can see, the side of the cabinet is recessed from the face. So in order to attach these, I'm going to have to build out a bunch of these spacers to make them flush so I can mount those hinges. The good news is there's 8 of them to make, and the even gooder news is they're all going to be different thicknesses. I add a slight chamfer to clean up the exposed edges, and then mark out the locations to screw it into the cabinets. I don't want the hinge screws to overlap. Spacers painted, ready for install. I have the location of each of them marked on the back since they were all custom built for a very specific corner of the cabinet, and I don't want to mess those up. No need for glue on this. 2 screws will be plenty strong enough, and I want to be able to back them out if I ever need to, which I won't. I have a variety of screw lengths since we have such a variety of depth on the different spacers. I don't want to screw through the cabinet wall. I use the red putty in the brad nail holes to prep for painting. And then I remembered that I should have installed the slides after I painted. We've got doors, we got drawer fronts, all sanded nicely and ready for paint. The cabinet itself I painted with a foam roller, but these are going to be sprayed. Before I can do that, I want to drill out some holes for the hinges. I have a 35mm Forstner bit ready to go, and I want to mark where I'm going to drill. I would like them all to be in the same place, so I made a little template that I can line up on the edge and mark out the center of each hole, and then over to the drill press with the Forstner bit. I've also cut a dummy piece the exact same dimensions as one of the styles, so I can drill some test holes, actually mount the hinges, and get it up on the cabinet without messing up my doors. The guide hole in the jig is centered, so all I have to do is line up the edge on either end of the door. I've marked the appropriate door overlay on the test piece so I can line them up exactly. Screw in the hinges and then repeat for all the doors. With all the hinges in place, I can simply pop the doors in later when they're done. I've got all the hinges drilled except for 2. I purposely left out the top hinges for each of the lower doors because originally I had installed the spacers at the top of the cabinet. And then I remembered I'm going to make a couple of skirts to cover up the bottom of the sink. So those hinges need to be attached below that line.
Time to paint some doors and drawer fronts here where Dexter meets Rembrandt. Although, probably Jackson Pollock, if I'm being honest. I've never used a spray gun before. I've only ever foam rolled my projects, but a friend of mine has one of these, loves it, so he loaned it to me. I'm going to take some white latex paint and dilute it by about 10% with water just to thin it out, get a nice even coat, avoid any clogs. Of course, I'm going to use a couple of test pieces first because I do not know what I'm doing, so we'll make some mistakes on that first. That's it. Let's go.
That sound like Bane?
Well,
so all the doors and drawer fronts are painted. We got the hinges installed. For the paint, I did use the sprayer for the first few coats, but it turns out it wasn't what I was hoping for. It ended up using an awful lot of paint. It was difficult to control the output, the spray size and all that. It wasn't the most expensive sprayer. It probably cost about $60 for the whole unit. And I think you really got to spend some money if you want to get results. So I ended up finishing them all with a foam roller and a brush, and they're fine. In general, I'm not super happy with the doors anyways. I said I would try them with pine. I thought I could get away with it. I don't think I'm going to. So I think I'm going to end up redoing these with MDF. I bought some scrap MDF at the store, and I'll put together a test one to see if I like them better. But for now, these are gonna work. So let's get this last one popped in. I hope it goes in smooth for this take. Nope. Yeah, so that didn't work out. That's better. We've got doors. Now they still need to be adjusted a little bit and have some door pulls installed, but so far so good. Check it out, got a countertop picked out, not installed yet. Still have to cut a hole for the water hose to come through. Got to flush up the end, iron on the what have you. Once that's in, we're going to cut a hole, install the sink and the drainage pipes underneath. I've ordered some plywood so we can make the drawer boxes, get those done, drawer fronts installed. Then we'll pick out all the little handles, the pulls to match. After that, pretty much we're looking at a skirt underneath to finish the project. Well, not quite finish the project. We still have to do all the tile up here, add the 2 Steckdosen, and replace the taps. But we're getting close now. Next step is to install the countertop, which is just sitting here loose right now. I have it cut down to size, which on this end means not a 90, since these walls aren't perfectly square. So I had to measure an angle and cut this with a track saw to fit. Now, I thought I might have to actually scribe the contour of the wall into the countertop using a jigsaw, but it's relatively straight. So I got away with just an angle. We'll put some caulking in there. No one's gonna notice. This end, I've got it cut to length already, which is just shy of flush with this wall. And the next step after that is going to be securing it to the cabinet by screwing it in on the underside in the stretchers, both front and back. For this part here is going to be loose, which is why I made this cleat. Actually, it goes like that. We're going to screw it to the wall and attach the counter to the top that way. I clamp the countertop to make sure I don't bump it askew while I screw it into place. Counter's in, screwed down, nice and strong. Got the cleat in, so it's strong on this side as well. I had to drill a hole through this part of the counter to get the water feeding into the washing machine. Not ideal. I actually would prefer if the tap was down below the line here, which would make it difficult to turn on and off quickly, but it is a little bit ugly. In order to hide that, I would have had to probably double or triple the cost of this entire process. So ultimately, it wasn't worth it, so it's just going to live there. C'est la vie. Two issues did rear their ugly heads while I was drilling that hole. I waited until I had the countertop secured in place to mark out the location of the hole because I wanted it to be exact. What I failed to consider was drilling straight down, the tap would actually be in the way of the drill. So I had to drill it offset a little bit, which turned out to be not the end of the world. It's kind of towards the back a little bit more, which is even better. But one thing I didn't consider, I realized my crappy little hole saw was not deep enough to cut right through the counter, which meant I had to haul the washing machine out, climb underneath, and drill up through the bottom and meet somewhere in the middle, which it worked out okay. It was kind of my own version of the channel here. And while that's happening, I'm going to take this other piece of scrap MDF that I picked up for €1, and I'm going to build the skirt that goes along underneath the lower cabinet. Now, MDF might not be the best material to build this considering the potential moisture on the ground, but I will paint it with waterproof paint, and at €1, if I have to make another one a couple of years down the road, I can simply pop it out, put a new one in. This is fairly simple. Cut it to width and length, and then add some mitered corners. The tape method works really well here. Lots of glue, and then check for a 90.